What's up, guys? Welcome to Seeds of Music. I'm your host, Kyle Williams, and this is the #1 web show where aspiring independent artists and musicians can learn right now how to gain wider exposure, grow a strong base of raving fans, and make a living doing what they love. So before we get started, I just have a quick announcement. I've just launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund a Seeds of Music iTunes podcast. Now, why would I want to create a podcast? Well, benefit number one is that this show can reach more people. Last year, about 37.6 million downloaded podcasts on a monthly basis. So it's an untapped community. And being a bigger, more popular show will make it easier for me to get bigger and better interviews, thus giving you better information to get exposure, get fans, and get paid. Benefit number two is that you can listen to an audio-only format of the interviews on your smartphone or on the tablet because you're going to be on the go or stuck in traffic or working out, and it's just much more convenient to be able to just plug in your smartphone and plug in your earbuds and just listen to the audio itself and multitask doing whatever else that you need to do. It's actually how I consume all of my content that I keep up with, like Tropical MBA's business podcast that I've been really into lately, and I listen to them all the time, and that's how I listen to it. So check out the link to the Kickstarter in the show notes, and if you think that a podcast is a great idea, pledge for some great prizes from button pins to guitar lessons to marketing consultations and awesome promotion for your music. On the show today, our guest is David Dombrowski, and he is the Chief Marketing Officer for Instant Encore, a U.S.-based company providing performing artists and arts organizations with 21st century tools to engage today's audiences. And the topic is 5 ways to effectively use social media to build superfans. So, number 1, we're going to talk about authenticity, how it's not about the channel, it's about the voice. Number 2, you need to treat social media like a cocktail party. Number 3, this concept of high touch. Number 4, the superfan and why you should reward them every single time. And lastly, social media and context versus content. This is a really great interview, so stick around. All right, David, man, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent, man. So, we were talking about before I started this interview that, we're just going to have, we have this really strong focus for what we want to tackle. So I figure we'll just go ahead and start hitting up the bullet points for this interview. We're talking basically, social media. It's a platform that is out there that is really important for musicians and artists to be able to learn how to use to effectively grow their careers and build relationships. But what I've been finding is that not a lot of artists know how to really effectively use it. Like they throw up maybe a Facebook page or a Twitter, and there's a lot of misconceptions they have about how to effectively use social media. So just wanted to talk a bit about that. And the first thing that you mentioned that really stuck out with me is this concept of having authenticity with your social media. And can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. I think authenticity in social media for me is, especially when we're talking about dealing with musicians, artists, bands, I want to connect with the people. And because I want to have a connection with a human being, I want to be able to ascertain a sense of their personality. I want to be able to get a sense of who they are, not just what they want me to do. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there are so many people that have very cultivated styles of communicating, and for people like that who write in a highly stylized way that doesn't necessarily reflect their personality, and they bring that to social media, it comes off inauthentic. If you're starting to throw around marketing speak, or if you're starting to constantly Well, if you're constantly hitting people up to buy this, buy that, make sure to come see us at blah, 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 make sure to buy a ticket. If
Okay.
everything becomes a pitch, then I know nothing about you except that you sound desperate for
Mm-hmm.
me to buy something.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to connect with you on social media, I want to know you. I want to know the person behind the music. I want to know the person behind those lyrics, who wrote that crazy song that I love so much. I want to know what influences you, what makes you inspired to do what you do.
Yeah.
And I want to connect with that. Um, and so I think authenticity for me means when you are on social media, be real. Be real, be you.
Yeah.
Because that's who we want to know. We don't want to know some fictionalized version of you, really. Unless that's part of your gig. Like there's this guy I saw do a showcase at presenting a touring conference last week, and his gig is called Almost Elton. And basically he comes out in 70s Elton drag,
Wow.
sits
Nice.
down at the piano with his band, and they do a set as if he was Elton.
Uh-huh.
So him, there's a mix. You want a little bit of that Craig as Elton, but if I'm connecting with Craig
Yeah.
Twitter, I still want Craig as Craig
So it
because
just, yeah, it's
what
intentional.
on.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have to, even if part of your act is artificial creation of a persona, there's still a reality that I want to connect with there. It's
Yeah.
not just the persona I want to connect with. I want to connect with the authentic artist there.
Yeah, so it seems like there's a few exceptions where it's intentional, like you have an alternate persona, or you're
Right.
maybe you show up to shows like wearing a disguise or whatever, and so you have like a character that you're playing out. But more often than not, it's usually you, and you're exposed on social media, and people want to connect with you and learn more about you and become more involved. And this actually reminds me of the TED Talks that I saw you that I watched you speak at. I wasn't there, but I watched it on YouTube. It was, I think it was
Yeah.
Michigan Avenue, and you related this Confucius quote that basically said, if you tell me, I won't learn. If you show me, maybe I'll learn. But if you involve me, then I'll understand. And it seems like that's what social media needs to be about for artists and musicians, is involving fans or potential fans like in your life and your art and your creativity. And maybe social media just isn't the place to sell or to make pitches, or yeah, you can let people know about your shows, but I kind of feel like an email list is more proper for that, because then people have given your email consent to keep them updated with your shows, and you can do your pitches there.
Well, there's a 411 rule when it comes to social media. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, the 411. So the idea is that um, for every one, say, let's take Twitter as a platform.
Okay.
For every one tweet that you send out reminding people to come to a show, or somehow marketing something you put out there, maybe a track you've released on iTunes, whatever. For every one tweet you send out, you originate that does that. You need to retweet 4 other people's items that would be that is genuinely of interest to you, and B, would be of interest to people who follow you.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you need to respond one time at least to someone else who has mentioned you or who has somehow influenced you.
Yeah.
So you're making it be much more than just a megaphone for announcing whatever it is that
Yeah.
you're saying at the
I think you
moment.
should respond to every. I mean, it's a job. It's like it's an extension of your art. Like, I think as an artist, you should respond to every single every single Twitter mention, unless you get like an insane amount and you can't get to them all. You dedicate time to get to as many as you can.
Absolutely agree.
Which leads me to my next point. Yeah, I love this the way you put it. You said that we should treat social media like a cocktail party, and I think that just hits it spot on. But for anyone who has never been to a cocktail party or needs a little bit of explanation, how can you sum that up?
Well, you can think about people that you've actually, either A, have met at a cocktail party or in any kind of initial networking, if you will, even at a professional level, where you have those people who seem to be genuinely interested in engaging you in conversation and are just as interested in learning about you as you are about learning about them. And that kind of sincerity and of engagement is hyper important, because you have those other people and you've met them who, when you go, it almost feels like they're waiting for you to stop talking because they've got what they want to say already in line. And of course, what they have to say is already about themselves and all the amazing things that they're doing.
Yeah. Red flag when someone's does that, when they open up the conversation with something that they've done and it's obviously meant to impress. That's a red flag.
But, it's the idea of, if you go to a party, the whole idea is to meet people and to interact with people. And interaction is a two-way street. It's not just outbound communication from you. That's a lecture. That's a lecture. That's a soapbox. That's a marketing pitch, a sales pitch. It's not an interaction. Social media is an interaction. And therefore, we also need to think of, similarly around a cocktail party, is the level of investment in the conversation. When you first meet somebody, your level of investment is at a certain level.
Yeah.
It's after you develop a relationship over time that your investment increases, and therefore the depth of the conversation, the nuance of the conversation, the intimacy of the conversation increases over time. And I think social media is the same way, where as someone becomes a fan of yours or a follower or friend, depending on whatever platform you're on, then over time they gain a stronger sense of who you are. You gain a stronger sense of who your fans are and who you're interacting with. And again, it's something that develops over time. It's not something that's going to be obvious from the initial interaction.
Yeah, because you're looking for genuine connections, and those take time. But
force them, and try and force them, you lose authenticity. Going back to that, when you try to force intimacy, when you try to force connections that haven't been given their due and haven't been fostered and developed, but you try to create them as if they've sprouted from nothing, already highly involved, invested, and intimate, that it loses a sense of authenticity and can come off insincere, even though you may not mean it that way.
Yeah. Because social media, you're communicating through typed word. It's not like you're talking to the person in person every day, and so you have to be strategic about how you approach it. And it seems like also it's important to keep in mind that these things take time, so you don't rush it. High touch. This concept of high touch. What is high touch, and why is that important?
Well, high touch is because you're dealing in a mass environment, an environment of many fans, many people interacting, engaging. It's easy to get low touch. And what I mean by low touch is things become automated. Things lose a sense. There's a lack of personal nature to it. It feels impersonal. Mm-hmm. It feels as though you are speaking to the masses, but not to me.
Yeah.
And I think high touch is where you are at that point with everything where you can still engage people. Going back to the example you said before, where you feel like you should respond to everybody
Yeah.
who comments on you, mentions you, or replies to you on Twitter.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a high touch strategy because, as your Twitter followers increase, the number of people who respond to you or reply to you is going to increase as well. And that's going to mean that as a strategy for high touch, you're going to have to wonder, where does that cap out?
Yeah.
If I'm somebody who has, less than 100 really hardcore fans, then I can be really high touch. If I'm somebody who starting to creep to, 50,000, starting to get up to 100,000 people following me on Twitter,
Yeah.
then I'm starting to get to a point where I may not be able to be as high touch, but we're still talking about a platform where you communicate at 140 characters a shot. So it doesn't have to be too time intensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're having to create a response video on YouTube, for everybody that replies to a tweet.
Yeah.
It's so the platform, I think, helps gear us toward what does high touch mean in that platform. But I mean, for example, I know people who never respond to or never engage with people who are commenting on their YouTube videos. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
A lot of people, unfortunately, think of YouTube as just a distribution channel.
It's a community.
A social media engagement platform. And that's a mistake. So if you're out there and that's what you're doing, you're just posting your videos, please respond to the people who are making comments about your videos. It's part of the conversation, and that's what...
And if they have videos, comment on those too.
Yeah, exactly. Go and look at their videos. See what the through line is between you and them. What is it that connects you? What is it that resonates across the two of you? Or, talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think similarly, I think high touch, and this goes back a little bit to the cocktail party too. When you're at a cocktail party, one of the ways in which you learn about the person you're talking to is by asking them questions. You ask them questions about themselves or that prompt stories from their experience. And I think in a high touch strategy for social media, a high touch engagement, you can do that. You can use your Facebook page to reveal information about you and your work and still ask questions of the people who are responding to your work and learn more about them.
Probably the most powerful thing is to ask questions.
I think so. I think asking questions, and especially if you're trying to get a sense of engagement, I think asking questions prompts engagement. I mean, people respond to the questions that are asked of them. I think also providing snapshots of your life, photos do great on social media in terms of engagement. Because you're dealing with what is a highly verbal platform in general, it's a lot of text.
Yeah.
Image does make a big difference. And, there are reported statistics where images get stronger likes, stronger replies, stronger comments than standard text being done in the same platform. And high touch in that regards means that if you're posting an image and someone responds with a comment, it's going and looking at the comment and maybe responding to the comment. And in Facebook, that can be time intensive. If you've got a lot of posts that you've done over the last 2 weeks and you're getting a lot of comments, you might have to spend 20, 30 minutes replying to comments.
Which is nothing.
But
in my opinion, that's nothing.
20, 30 minutes out of a week?
Get up early in the day or just lock yourself up, get rid of all distractions, and you can bang it out, in that amount of time.
And it goes back, I think it goes back to what's your motivation. And this is, what's your motivation goes into, what's your motivation for being an artist?
Yeah.
We're
going deep now.
Are you really just wanting to make music because you can do that in your room by yourself?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to connect with people and share something, your artistry with people,
Yeah.
then it behooves you to know who's responding to your music and learning more about them
And how to communicate with them
and how to
effectively. Because
communicate
that's a
with them.
craft to learn in its own.
And it's part of developing a fan base. It goes back to the word develop. You
Mm-hmm.
know, to develop something, you have to foster it, and you foster it through interactivity and engagement.
Yeah. And we have a strong community here of, people are watching this who may also consider themselves just do-it-yourself musicians. And so part of that mentality is taking on the responsibility of your career, and that involves, learning how to communicate, learning how to build relationships, and taking time away from music creation to work on that, because that's just the reality of what it is. But, I think the payoff is huge if you're able to successfully do that. And so how does high touch lead into super fan rewards?
So the idea of super fan rewards is, I mentioned the concept that a relationship, even in a relationship in social media, is something that happens over time, and it happens with repeated engagement. You know, that with each successive level of engagement, I am becoming more intimate with someone, more connected with them. It's almost like peeling back the onion, getting to the heart of something.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, as I get closer to the heart of what it is that connects me with my fan, there should be an increasing level of or sense of reward for fostering this sense of connection between myself and the fan. And so how do you do that through a platform like social media? There are lots of things you can do. There are people who do, we've talked about this before, who do contests through a particular platform. So maybe they do a Twitter contest where, the first person to respond to X gets a free copy of my concert video. Or, whoever does X on Facebook gets 2 tickets to my show on Friday night. Those types of contests happen a lot. And what they are is they're not really about selling your tickets or selling your video or your album or anything. They're really about rewarding your fans.
Yeah.
Rewarding your fans for responding to you, rewarding your fans for connecting to you to begin with and for following you and for engaging in this relationship with you.
Yeah.
And there are all different ways. I think there are different ways of rewarding fans, and it depends on the platform you're using in social media. If you're using Facebook, then, maybe you're providing a link on your Facebook page where they can listen to a new track, a streaming track, for a new piece that you've just recorded that isn't available to anybody else. If you're using Twitter, then maybe it's a link to a private video on YouTube that's just available for them. There are ways of creating platform-specific rewards for your fans. And so it's just a matter of, A, learning the platform or platforms that you're using and what their capabilities are. And then 2, brainstorming, what do I have? What do I have to reward them with? It can be, there are people I know who would freak out for a 10-minute conversation over Skype.
Yeah.
Or, or something like that. If I was following an artist and I had the ability to engage with them for 10 minutes one-on-one via Skype, I would be over the moon.
Yeah.
And what did it cost you? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Free to call on Skype and just computer, internet.
It's just a matter of thinking, what platforms, what channels do I have available? What content do I have available, including my own time?
Yeah.
What do I have available that I can offer that can help nurture this friendship, this connection between myself and the people who are responding to my work?
Mm-hmm.
How can I deepen it?
Yeah. And there's I can't think of anyone that really does that. Doesn't mean they're not out there already, but I can't think of anyone who takes it that far, and that's represents a lot of opportunity for artists to do that. Because I think if you can offer such a great reward to people who are huge fans of you, then you've got support, you've got great support. And going back to this concept of 1,000 true fans, which I talked about before in other interviews, that would be the base that supports you. And I think that you could even take it down to 300 hardcore fans or 200. It just depends on how much they would spend in a year on your products, based off of how strong of a relationship you've developed with them.
Well, it's also, you need to reward fans who are communicating on your behalf too.
Mm-hmm. Spreading the word.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a platform like, let's take Twitter, and you're seeing that there's someone who's repeatedly throughout the year, dropping your name or your Twitter handle in comments and talking about your work, or that they're going to your show, or that they just saw this video interview with you, if they're dropping all this stuff over time, that's a super fan. And that's somebody who is providing you with greater exposure than you would have on your own.
Treat them like gold.
And you need, you need to treat them like platinum. That's a highly, highly valuable relationship. And that's somebody that you need to Skype with for 15 minutes and let them ask anything you want. Let them record it. Let them post it on their YouTube channel and be totally cool with that.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Right? That's great advice that I was just thinking I could implement right away. Just like really like narrowing down like who I've had the most interaction with and reaching out to them in a much stronger way. The last thing I wanted to cover is this idea of context versus content in social media.
So we've heard the phrase "content is king" a lot, particularly in regards to social media, and I think the corollary of that is context is queen. And what I mean by that is, if content is the music that you're producing, then the context of your creation is equally as important. People love seeing behind the scenes. People love getting a sense of what has led to the creation. Inspirations, life experiences.
Shot of the studio before you record the album or the song.
Shot of the studio. There's a guy named Matt Alber whose work I love, and he recently did a video of him working with a string quartet to kind of orchestrate some of his songs that he's written over the years. And I found the video to be just as fascinating as the end product. And, again, it was providing context for the end product was the orchestrated version of what he's been putting out for years with this quartet. But the context of it and the process that he and the quartet went through to get to that end result was equally fascinating for me as a fan. Mm-hmm. And I think that type of context for what you're doing. I mean, Sarah McLachlan this week has been posting pictures of the studio where she's recording her new album. So I think there are people out there who realize that context is important.
Yeah.
There's a composer named Lyra Auerbach who she has an Instagram account and she tours with her work all the time around the world, and she uses Instagram as a way to kind of provide context for her travels and her tour. And so people who follow her and her work are also interested in the tour she's going on and her experiences as she's touring and what they may ultimately lead to in terms of inspiration and creation down the line. So context is just as important as content.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in my head of all the artists that if I were able to, have like a peek inside their lives, about, especially being a musician too, just seeing their process, you know, like how they deal with the non-musical aspects of their life is really interesting to me, and kind of creates like an extra bit of value on top of that.
And it's not necessarily saying that, you know, you need like a reality TV show.
Oh, no.
Something,
no
you know.
Big Brother.
No Big Brother on YouTube for musicians. But that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that, you know, if you can show and share part of your creative process as well as your product, your fans will appreciate it.
That's it. Yeah, that's a much better way of putting it. So, time to move on to the fun question, which is the last question.
Okay.
What is your favorite album, and what would your life be like if it never existed?
I wrestle with this all the time. I've watched your other videos, so I know there are a lot of people who deflect the question.
Yeah, they do. So
I'm not going to deflect.
Don't deflect it, man. I'll be disappointed.
I'm going to commit to an answer. For me, and this is really hard because I listen to so much music, but for me, I'm going to say that probably the most influential album has been Little Earthquakes by Tori Amos from 1991-92.
Okay.
And it's something that has, for the past 21 years, been a soundtrack at different points in life for me. And it was something that helped me learn to, strangely enough, helped me learn how to live within the moment in my body and move. There's a track on there called Precious Things, and I actually went to a movement workshop because I viscerally connect with that track so much. That is probably my favorite song of all time, which is really difficult to narrow down. You know, not just an album, but a track.
Yeah, I'm surprised you can do it.
And, you know, I went to a movement workshop, and it totally unlocked me as a person living within this form, being able to respond viscerally through my body to a work of music. So, yeah, it's probably been the most influential for me on a lot of different levels.
Awesome. I have not been disappointed. I think that was probably the quickest and the most definitive answer I've gotten so far to that question. I wish I had a reward to give you, but I don't. Just my just my props.
You've given me your time, and that is reward enough.
Sweet. Well, hey! I have to thank you for giving all of us, your time as well, David. It's been an enjoyable interview, and you know, that's the power of music. So hopefully we connect again sometime.
And thanks so much for inviting me.
Okay.
And that wraps up another episode of Seeds of Music. Today on the show, we had David Dombrowski from Instant Encore. Make sure to check out his links below. And also, make sure to check out the link to the Kickstarter if you are interested in getting on the bandwagon for a podcast. Next, sign up for the email newsletter if you haven't already. This is the best way to stay up to date, not only with the interviews, but all the other exciting things that are happening at Seeds of Music and will be happening in the very near future. Hint, hint. Next, if you really liked this interview, if you feel like these 5 methods for using social media are really going to help you or have helped you, go ahead and like and share this interview on every single platform you've ever known in your life. Next, comment on the video. What was the greatest... what was your favorite point out of all the 5 points? Which one do you feel like resonated with you the most and why? And hey, I better see you going out there and actually applying this stuff and commenting and letting us know how it's worked out for you, because we really need to narrow down what works and what doesn't. And in order to do that, you got to have some interaction in the Seeds of Music community. So don't feel embarrassed, don't be shy, go ahead and comment. And lastly of the last, who would you like to see interviewed? Do you know any artists that you think would be awesome to have on the show and sharing their story? Let me know who they are. Just send an email to kyle.seedsofmusic@gmail.com. gmail.com. And if you are the person who wants to be interviewed, hey, remember George Hendrickson? He's a member of the Seeds of Music newsletter, and we brought him on for an interview, and it was great. It was fun for both of us. It'll be fun for you too, I promise. Until next time.